So what's the best place to start as a self-learner who wants to get into programming? I see this question asked a lot by people online. Maybe it's because they have a lot of free time, or maybe they're thinking about changing career paths. I remember when I was a middle schooler and we all had TI-83 calculators. My friends had the TI-83 Plus, so they could play games on their calculator. But my mom bought me the TI-83, so I didn't have any games on it. But there was this one program that another friend had that would work on TI-83s, and it was a snake game. And I was looking at the program, I looked at the code, and I was wondering, how could anyone make something like this? How would anyone know how to write this kind of code? So I looked at the instruction manual for the calculator, and when I looked at it, I was just overwhelmed. I couldn't figure out what to do. I didn't understand anything that was going on, and I could make some games, but they were very simple. So I understand this question, why it can be overwhelming to know where to start to learn how to program. There are a lot of different coding websites, different programming languages, and different development tools. And how do you know which one to start? How do you know you're learning the right programming language? It can be overwhelming, and I understand this question because you just want to make sure you're not wasting your time and you're not learning the wrong thing that you'll have to unlearn later on. In this video, I'll be going over the best place to start for those of you who want to start learning how to code. And I'll be going over 4 beginner steps that you should take to get started. And the digital world is becoming a bigger and bigger place, so this will give you some direction and, most importantly, a vision for your software development journey. I'm Henrik, and I'm here to help you learn the software skills and tools you need to grow in your software development journey. So let's get started. So step 1 is to pick a programming language. There are a lot of different programming languages out there in the programming world, and it's good to just focus on one programming language. And you can figure out which programming language you want to learn first by figuring out what kind of programs you want to build. There's a lot of different kinds of software out there. There are websites, there are applications, mobile applications, web applications, and so there are a lot of different choices for which programming language would best suit that kind of application or program. With that said, there is a programming language that I recommend for beginners to learn first, regardless of what kinds of software they're trying to build, and that language is C. There's a lot of advice out there that C is not the best language to learn first because it's a hard language, and they would recommend something like Python instead. And they would say Python because Python is easier to program in, and it would make you less frustrated, I guess. And also, you can do a lot of things with Python. And granted, you can do a lot of things with Python, and it is easier to learn. But I would still recommend C anyways. And why is that? You can watch my other video on why I think beginners should learn C, but just to make it short here, there are 2 main reasons. The first reason is because learning C will really help you understand how computers really think under the hood. When you're coding in C, you have to remember how the computer is storing data and managing its memory. And that leads me to the second reason why I think beginners should learn C, and that's because it gives you a good programming foundation to learn other programming languages. If you start your coding journey first by understanding how the computer thinks, when you learn these other languages, you can carry that understanding to those other languages, and that helps you write better code in the long run. This was actually my experience. I started learning C first, and then when I went to my first job, I only knew C, but they asked me to code in C++, Python, Java, and JavaScript, and I could do it really easy. I could pick up those languages really easy because of my background in C. Then I went to my second job, and then they asked me to code in C#, and they knew I could do it because I had that background in C. So to help you in learning your first programming language, I do have a free guide for you. It's called my 30-Day Beginner Coding Challenge, and it's a guide that teaches you how to code in 30 days. My tutorials are in C, but you can code this in any programming language that you want. You can code it in Python if you want to go down that route. And this guide has 4 programming projects, and each week you'll do 1 programming project, and also in each week I'll lay out the programming concepts you need to learn in order to code that programming project. So it's a really fun guide, and if you want to just start learning how to code, then this guide will be really helpful for you. So you can download that in the link in the description. Alright, now the second step, and this is covered in my guide, but the second step is to set up your coding environment. Turn your computer into a software development machine. Setting up your coding environment is a really easy step to make, but it's a really important step in order for you to start learning how to code. And it usually is just as simple as downloading Visual Studio Code from their website. So here, just go to the Visual Studio Code website, click on download, and choose the right installer for your OS. I have a Mac, so just download it from here. I already have it installed, but this is what it looks like when you install it, and this is a simple C program. This is probably the first program you should build, and see, it doesn't really look that hard, right? So you can just run it here and you can see it output the hello world here. You will need to make sure you install the right extensions for this to work, and if you want more information about that, you can check out my other video on how to set up Visual Studio Code. Alright, the third step, and this is the whole point of my coding challenge, and that is to build your first toy projects. And what are toy projects? Toy projects, like the name suggests, are just these projects that you do to help you play with the programming language, to help you understand how the programming language works. So this is an example of a toy project, and a toy project is most likely a console application. And a console application is just an application where everything will be done and all the output of the program will be in the console. In my coding challenge, the first project of that coding challenge is a tip calculator. And this code is done by a developer named Syed, and he sent me this code because he asked me a question about his code. But let's go ahead and run it and see what an example of a console application is. So here the console application first asks you to calculate a tip or quit, and then you can select T or enter in T if you want to calculate a tip, and then enter the bill. How much was the bill? It's $500. And then what kind of percentage of tip are you going to give? So you should say 18% in the US at least. You should tip 18% supposedly. And then the number of people is you split the bill to 5 people. So then it'll calculate the tip amount. Wow, that's a lot of money. And then the total bill, which is 590, and then the shared cost split among the 5 people is 118. So you're able to calculate the tip, the shared cost, if you have more than one person who's eating with you. And then the application will ask you if you want to calculate another tip or if you want to quit, and then we want to quit, so we'll enter in Q. So that's an example of a toy project. Alright, the fourth and final step is to find other programmers, and that's because if you're just coding by yourself, maybe you're coding something in the wrong way and you wouldn't know about it unless someone who is more senior, someone who's more experienced than you can point it out for you. So preferably you want to find people who are actual professionals, people who are actually coding for their jobs. Like me, you can ask me, you can find me, but hopefully you find these mentors who can help point you out and point you in the right direction. I will point you to 2 online resources that I think are worth looking at. The first one is Reddit, and there's a subreddit called Learn Programming, and that's where this person asked this question. He asked what's the best place to start for a self-learner, and he got a lot of good responses here. But this subreddit is really good. So go to this subreddit, Learn Programming, and they give a lot of help for new programmers. There's a lot of new programmers asking some beginner questions here. This one's funny. Am I too dumb to understand programming? There is a frequently asked questions page that I think is really helpful for beginners too. So here's the table of contents, and see there's a lot of questions here that new people ask, and it's kind of related to the question of this video. So which programming language should I start? Where do I start? So they have a lot of good advice here for new people, new programmers. So I recommend you check this out and see, like I mentioned earlier, it depends on what you're trying to learn, and depending on what you're trying to learn, you can consider a certain programming language for that thing you're trying to build. Now I will say this about this subreddit. When I look at the comments, sometimes there's a lot of people giving bad advice. So I would recommend you take it with a grain of salt and try to understand different viewpoints. Try to understand and be aware of different opinions on things. For example, C. A lot of people would say C is not a good programming language to learn first, but try to understand different viewpoints. Try to understand why other people suggest that you learn C first. And that leads me to my second online resource that I recommend, and that is CS50. And what is CS50? CS50 is a programming class. It's Harvard University's Introduction to Computer Science class. And I like CS50 because they teach programming concepts in a way that's easy to understand. And if you look at the weeks, it's an 11-week course. If you look at the weeks, the first weeks are actually in C. And it's only until week 6 that they start to go into Python. And they actually explain why they start with C. And if you look at this section here, it says, this course starts with a traditional but omnipresent language called C that underlies today's newer languages, via which you'll learn not only about functions, variables, conditionals, loops, and more, but also about how computers themselves work underneath the hood, memory, and all. The course then transitions to Python, a higher level language that you'll understand all the more because of C. And the nice thing about C also is that it's actually free, so you can get some certificates or credits if you just do the assignments. And just a caveat here is that there's a lot of people who actually say that CS50 is a hard course. and you can look at the comments here, and there's a lot of threads online about how hard CS50 is, and it makes sense because CS50 is a programming course from Harvard University. Look at this guy, it took him 8 months to complete everything, but in the class itself it's actually an 11-week course. So what I usually recommend with CS50 is I wouldn't stress so much about doing the assignments and trying to get certificates. I would actually just watch the lectures, and the lectures are really good. They explain the concepts really well, and they have a lot of props in there, and these props will help you really understand these programming concepts. And a lot of these different lectures, they give you a good overview of the software development industry, and each week they cover something new, and you can really learn a lot just by watching the lectures themselves and not really worrying about the programming projects. But once you get comfortable with programming, then go ahead and try doing the programming projects. And it's also cool here because you can look at the source code, you can look at what other people have done, you can look at the gallery of final projects, and so you see a lot of people building all these pretty cool programming projects. Alright, so those are the 4 beginner steps. The first one is to pick your programming language. Second one is to set up your coding environment. The third one is to build some toy projects to help you get better at that programming language. And then the fourth one is to find other programmers. And you can do all of these 4 different steps by downloading my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And if you have any questions while you're doing that challenge, feel free to email me and ask me questions, and I'll try to help you out. Alright, that's it for this week's video. Let me know in the comments section which step you're going to take next. Is it the first one to figure out your programming language? I hope it's C. Is it the second one to set up your coding environment? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section, and I'll be sure to answer you there. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.